Welcome back to the lecture. Now it's time to take a first look at the application that we are going to build in this section. We will also take a closer look at these data files for this project and we will also check out the flowchart for this application. Now let's just start, and this is the application that we are going to build throughout this session. And also the next one, it is called the Bankist, and this is the demo version that is actually live on a bankist.netlify.app. So I invite you to actually try out this application together with me as you watch this video. So to get a real good feeling for how it all works, now this looks a little bit empty, and so you can just basically log in. So just write here JS and then the pin that is 1111, and so bank is stands for minimalist banking. So this is why we have this kind of banking. So an online bank interface, we have all the movements here, we have the overall balance of account up here. Then we have some summary data here, and on the right side we have three options that we can do. So we can transfer money to someone else, we can request a loan from the bank, and also we can close the account. So let's request a loan here. Let's say that 1,000 euros. So I click here, and then after some time it is approved and it appears here as a deposit. Now then I can also transfer money, and there is a user called JD, and let's say I want to transfer 5,000. So let's try that. So now I have 5,000 less than I have to have. So finally we can also sort these here. So now they are sorted and now they are back to normal. And now let's do the other account JD with the pin of 2222. So let's check out if she has a deposit of 5,000, and here it is. We also see that this account here is in US dollars and with the American formatting, while the other one is the euros. And so that's something that we are going to take care of this in the next section. But in this section, we will actually take care of displaying all of these movements, making these operations here possible, and calculating the statistics as well as the current balance. So I think it is really amazing, and it also like a real world use case and overall. So this is a great project for training arrays because we can do lots of these stuff that you see here on the screen using arrays. So now that you have a feeling for how this application works, let's take a look at a flowchart. So here this is the flowchart for the Bankist application. And just like before in the pig game that we just saw in that live version of the Bankist application. So starting there in the top left as the user logins, which is on these yellow actions. So all of these yellow elements here mean some sort of action. So when the login action is performed, we check for the correct credentials, and if they are correct, we display the UI, and then we also update the UI. And so that means to calculate the balance, calculate the summary, and display the movements, and then later on in the next section. So we will also start and display a log out timer. So all out of these happens right at the beginning of the user logins. And so actually this part in the beginning here, everything that is inside the update UI will be the first thing that we will do. And then we will take care of these other operations. So probably we will come back to this flowchart by then. But anyway, this is already a very good overview of all of these steps that we have to implement in order to build this application. And you can spend some more time on this and actually to compare it to the functionality of the application. So that's why one more time I included this flowchart in these data files of this section. Now this time, just like in a pig game, we built this flowchart because all that matters here in this project is to build this application and learn all about arrays. But in the next big project, we will actually plan the entire application together, and I will show you all the steps that we have to go through in order to come up with a flowchart like this. So now we will learn how it works and how to plan an application from the ground up. But for now, again, my purpose with this flowchart is to give us a good overview, so a good roadmap to actually go ahead and implement all the features of this application. And so then whenever we get lost, we can always just come back to this flowchart and see exactly how the application works and what we have left to implement. Now let's go back to our code editor and take a closer look at all of these data files that we have there. So right here at the top of our script, we have these four accounts objects. And so this one here was the JS that I showed you in the demo. And so here then are the movements stored in that object. We also have the pin, and later on we will also use this interest rate. And now of course in the real world you would want much more data about each of the movements, not just a value. So for example, we would use the date of each movement, maybe a description and so on. But here we really just want to work with the arrays, and so I am keeping it very simple, but still at the same time fun to build. So one object for each account, and you could ask why not use a map instead of an object. Well, the thing is that we are going to pretend that all these data is coming from a web API. So a little bit like we talked about earlier. And whenever we get data from an API, this data usually comes in a form of object. And so this is why we have objects here, and then finally the under array containing all these account objects in there. Remember that this is one of the most common ways of organizing data in JavaScript application, and so that's why we are going to use it throughout this section to make this actually feel a bit more like a real world application. So that's the data. Take a look at here little bit at the other files. So as we always have the prettier configuration, and so here the flowchart that I showed you, and so here you can take a look at by yourself. Then the index.html, and this one is a lot more complex now, and we will actually need it to take some code out of there. Then here we have the icon and the logo. So like the icon you see here in this tab, that is the fav icon, and finally we have the style. So this is all for the data files. Just notice that I already selected all of the elements that we are going to need. So you see it's a lot of stuff, and I'm going to explain what each of these is, but what matters is that this way we don't have to write all of these codes ourselves. And so this makes development a little bit faster. And so this is all about the session. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.